What's up, everybody? This is CJ. Welcome back to the channel. Today, I'm going to be talking about the games I played in April. I've been delayed getting this to you because of some technical difficulties with my system. You can notice that there's no mic here anymore. I have to get a new one. But anyway, let's get to it. This is my New Year's resolution, of course, to chart all the games that I played all year long and see how I did. And then at the end of the year, I'm going to give a big recap of all the games and the ones I liked. So one thing that's a change from last month is I'm going to be telling you on a scale from 1 to 5 whether what my enjoyment factor was for this game. So whether it was a game I loved, and might have had a bad experience with it as well. So keep in mind that this is the experience of that play and not necessarily the experience of the game in general. All right, so I played Marrakesh. Marrakesh was the first game I played this month. This is my second time playing it. I liked it a little bit less than the first time I played it. So I think the first time I played it, it was probably about a 4.5 experience in my enjoyment. And because the rest of the table was really having a great time. This time it was about a 4. I thought it was really fun, and I still love the combo building aspects. The engine building was really great, but it was a bit long. And I felt like by the end, if you didn't have a good engine set up, it was a bit much ado. Like you were just trying to do something while you were clearly losing. One of my friends who turns out to be very, very, very talented at finding busted combos in games, found a really busted combo with the river and just like crushed us. But it was fun. I had a great time. We played for second place, of course, and I enjoyed Marrakesh. So it was a 4 out of 5. I do an Imperium Uprising. I had 2 plays this month, which is very low, but I've been, again, dealing with all sorts of things. I've not been able to get to the table this game as much as I wanted to. I've only had 2 games, but they were all part of the Stoneburner Open, which is still going on, so check it out. We are doing our best to get all of those games recorded. Some of them will fall through the cracks, but then again, that's the way it is. These games were a lot of fun. I didn't do great in them. They are all on the channel, you can see, and we'll keep playing and have fun. My big thing right now is to go back and play the game 6-player and just really grind 6-player games. So I'm hoping to do that soon. Next game I played is Maracaibo. Maracaibo is my personal favorite Alexander Pfister game. I think it is the most interesting, and I think it has the most dynamics, and it feels different every time I play it. Maracaibo, I played this on Board Game Arena, which is awesome. Go check it out if you have not played it. It's a great implementation. The best thing about it for me is that you can instantly set up the beginner or the easy, medium, or hard modes, which just change the board a little bit. In the physical copy I have over here, you can see right up there, I have all the stuff for it, even the expansion, which I'm a little ho-hum on, but the component quality is nice. But the hardest thing about that game is getting it to the table and putting all the things on the board, because you have these little cards that tell you what the best setup or what the setup is for a specific situation. Then you have to go and fiddle with all the little chits and put them on the board. That's a big hassle, but on Board Game Arena it makes it so much easier. I wish that it was an easier game to get to the table, because it is one of my favorite games. But anyway, 4.5 out of 5 experience. I had a great time with this one, and I want to keep playing this on BGA. My next game I played is Wormspan. If you've ever played Wingspan, it's a lot like that, but with dragons. Is there anything different in it? Yes, there is. There actually is there are a couple things different. The boards, where you'd usually have a top row, medium row, or bottom row, I can't remember what they're called. There's like the grasslands, the forests, and something, the wetlands. Those are similar, but more evenly distributed in their power. So basically you can't just like churn out one thing. Also, the dragons have special areas that they want to be placed into, so you can't just like put them anywhere, which is nice. The other thing about the game that I think makes it really interesting is you have to excavate or explore caves before you can get a dragon to put in there. I still don't quite understand what you're doing in this game, really. You're like finding caves and then putting dragons comfortably into them so that they can have a good time and lay eggs. I really don't know. It doesn't matter. It's basically an engine builder that is themeless, but the art is gorgeous. I'd say that in one play I saw a lot of the same cards, which felt like that they were different cards. Obviously they're all different, but they all had similar powers or the same powers, and so I felt like it was a little samey after a while. But the strategies were developing. I thought that it was an interesting game. I still don't think it kind of like hits that engine builder sweet spot for me. Like if I'm going to build an engine builder, play an engine builder game, I really want to have just that engine building kind of tension of, can I finish my engine in time? This one I felt like I did have that a little bit, but it was kind of easy to get to the end of the engine, or the end of the rows. There's a little bit more to do now, so it feels like there's more variety, but ultimately you're doing the same kind of thing as you did in Wingspan, and you're competing with your opponents only in those central board goals. So you really don't have a lot of interaction with them. And that is one of my biggest criticisms of this game, is that there's just very little interaction whatsoever, and I don't count things like you play a thing, your opponents discard a card. That's not really that impactful. That's take that nonsense, and I wish that it wasn't in the game. I have the same criticism of like Arc Nova, those kinds of like take that cards. That's totally unnecessary, and they basically, like, for a game that's entirely solitaire, doesn't need those things. There are not that many, but there are some. So anyway, for this was a okay but solitaire experience, a little tedious at times, but I had fun and I want to play it again. So it's a 3 out of 5 for me. So I played Star Wars Unlimited a ton of times, and this is mostly my game group has kind of shifted a little bit away from traditional board gaming to card gaming right now. We're playing a lot of Star Wars Unlimited, and that's not a bad thing. I really like this game. I think it's, honestly, this is a 5 out of 5 game. It's a 10 out of 10 game, whatever medium, whatever range you're using to describe this game. It is phenomenal, and the new set's coming out, and I am so stoked for it. I wish I'd be able to get to like tournaments and things like that more often, because it's it's so fun to play, it's so fun to compete, and it's tense. This game is going to go far, so if you have not played Star Wars Unlimited, please do so. It's really great. Anyway, I didn't count the number of games I played this, but I don't need to anymore. I'll just mention it. Next game I played, and this one is definitely one I'd been trying to get back to the table. I don't personally own this game, but my friends do, and so I don't have to buy it. But Age of Steam is one of my favorite train games of all time. It's in my top 10 games of all time. It is a phenomenal game. I played it once this month, and we played with the Italy map. So the Italy map is interesting. Most of the game is a bidding game. You're trying to bid for turn order, and then that lets you choose. You have priority for choosing different powers, basically. Like you can locomotive, lets you deliver longer distances. You can build better and farther away, things like that. But there are a couple things in the Italy map that change the general chemistry of Age of Steam. One or two that are good, and one that's bad, in my opinion. The first one that was really good is that the new system of building track, the one changed for the building of the track, is you have to complete a link. So you have to go from a city to a city. You can't like leave a link hanging, which you can in Age of Steam generally. And this created a kind of interesting dynamic in that you really had to budget that money ahead of time, and you kind of could figure out where people were going. So that allows you to better kind of counterplay people with bidding. And I found that it was very rich in the way that you could predict what people were planning on doing, or sort of planning on doing. That was the one thing that was really interesting. The other thing that was really interesting is the map itself was very narrow, and there are no black cities on the board. A black city just requires a black cube to be delivered to it, like a red city requires a red cube. And in this way, it was strange, because you're usually used to those things, but there were still black cubes placed on the board. So because there were none of those cubes, it felt more focused on getting the best delivery and the best. I mean, it's always about that, but it felt like if you could plan out your route ahead of time and execute your plan very well, then that was a great strategy, and that's what happened. And at the end of 6 rounds, I was in the lead. The one thing that we didn't like is that those black cubes, which still exist on the board, are considered waste or something like that. And basically, the way they work is you can deliver them across other people's lines, and when you do so, whenever you cross a link, the owner of that link's income would go down by 1. And so none of us were really fiddling with that for a while. There weren't that many black cubes anyway for most of the game, and by the end there were some, but there were no other spaces to build track. We had built everything by the 6th round. They're supposed to play 7 rounds in I think it was a 4-player game we were playing. And when we got to that end of that 6th round, I was in the lead, and I was like, not just me, but other people at the table were saying, guys, I don't know if we really need to play the 7th round. There's nothing we're going to do. Everyone's just going to take those black cubes and hurt everyone else's income. that's all we could have done, really. There were maybe a couple other options, but they weren't significantly impactful, and the best things you could have done is hurt someone else. And so 3 out of the 4 of us wanted to just call it, and 1 wanted to stay. And I understand her reason to wanting to keep playing, because it sucks to stop games in the middle of them. But I have to say that if you're going to be playing the Italy map, I would recommend just playing to 6 rounds, because on the average, you're probably going to cover the entire map in that time anyway. And I also recommend, instead of using those black cubes, because just like take thatting people and hurting their income isn't fun. It's not very fun. You're not getting ahead yourself. There doesn't really appear to be a reason to do it. And none of us wanted to do that. So we all voted to abandon the game in the last round, in the final, the penultimate round, and just say it was not finished. So I didn't win, but I was in the lead. And ultimately, I think I played the best game, but we knew what was going to happen. Everyone else was going to tank my game. I was going to tank the second place's game. And then the third and fourth players were probably going to, like, either one of them was going to win or some goofy thing was going to happen. But it didn't seem particularly impactful, and it felt just like a last minute kind of like screw each other over, and we didn't want to do it. So that was my experience of Age of Steam. I'd say Age of Steam was a 5 out of 5 experience for me. This was a 4 out of 5 experience map. So I recommend doing something else with the black cubes, maybe using them as someone recommended, having them so that they inhibit you delivering there, and that you have to deliver them to another black cube in order to remove them from the board before you can deliver your normal cubes. So just something to think about in the future. So that's Age of Steam. All right, I played 2 games of Cubitos this month. Cubitos is an interesting game where you are essentially these little cube characters, and you're running around a map, and you're trying to get to the finish line first. It's a race game. And the way you do that is by rolling dice and then activating those dice to either move or take special actions. That's pretty much it. It's got push your luck in it, because some of the dice have symbols on they have symbols on like a third or half of the dice, and the others are blank. And so if you roll all blanks, you bust. And then you just basically don't do anything that round, more or less. But if you stop and you have icons, and you like activate them and you move around the board. Pretty straightforward. It has a deck building aspect, because you also get this currency that you're using to buy new cubes, new dice that will join your pool of things. So it's a pool builder, deck builder style game. And it reminds me a lot of the quest for El Dorado. I really liked the things going on in Cubitos. I think it's a little too light for me. It's pretty nice. The first game I just flat out won, because all I did was buy the stinky cat guy who like moved fast, and then I just had all of them, and then nobody else got them in time, which seemed a little anticlimactic. I was literally at the end of at the finish line where everyone else was trying to build engines, and they were like 3/4 of the way done. The second game, however, was a little bit more interesting. We played with the expansion map, which had a bunch of water locations. We played with some of the expansion cubes, the flamingo-y people who they're like water birds or something. I can't remember what they're called, but basically this let you move into water that you could not usually move into water, and then you get money for doing so, which was cool, or currency to buy more cubes, dice. And this one was a lot more interesting and a lot closer. I tied with a friend of mine in the very end, and then we had to have a roll off to see who went farthest in the last round, and he ended up winning. So that was a really good time, and it was a little bit weird. I think the tiebreakers at the end of this game are kind of silly, to be quite honest, and I think that should just be a tie if you both managed to get there on time, because everyone else was like decently far behind us. But it was a good time. I enjoyed it. This one was probably a 3 out of 5 experience for me. At least the first one was probably like a 2.5 out of 5 for me. Then the second one's probably 3.5 out of 5 for me. So it's somewhere in the middle. And I definitely recommend Cubitos to families who are interested in just like light, like small decisions, deck building, that sort of thing. I had a couple of issues with the game's presentation, and mostly with the expansion content. The one thing that I did not really like about the expansion content is that with all of the dice on the table, we really had trouble as a 6-player group. We played a 6-player game of Cubitos. We had difficulty seeing the cards because they have to correspond to the dice. The dice don't have their rules on them. There are a bunch of cards that are laid out that give you the specific abilities of those dice, and there's a bunch of different cards for each dice. I think 6 per each die or something like that, which means there's a lot of replayability. But it also means that when you have to figure out what everything does, you're like leaning over the table and trying to figure out and read everything. Good thing we have cell phones and we can just take pictures of them and use that to help us out. But it was a bit of a pain in the butt. I'd say that if there was an easier way for that to work or exist, that'd be cool, but there isn't. So it's still good. I like Cubitos. I'll play it again. I played 2 games of Summer Camp. Now, Summer Camp, which is right there, is a game that I got as a buy one get one free at my local store, and this was it's a Phil Walker Harding game. You know, the legendary designer of Barren Park and other games that I have in my collection. I can't remember at the top of my head, but he is a great designer. Oh, Sushi Go, things like that. So Summer Camp is a deck builder where you're racing. I played a lot of deck builders this month. A deck builder where you're racing across this board. The goal of the game is to get to the other side and collect these merit badges. You get these merit badges by either like crossing the rivers, getting all your pieces across like one of the rivers, or just getting one of your pieces to the other side of the board. And the interesting thing about this game is that it's very simple. It's a good family weight game. In fact, I played it with my daughter twice, and the first time she won and she was ecstatic. That was a great experience for her, and she wanted to play it again. She was asking for it to play it again. And the second time we played, it was just a me and her game, and I ended up winning. And she wasn't having didn't have that much fun, but I think it's better at more players. There's more stuff to do. So it's a deck builder. You do deck builder things, just like in Dominion, and you buy new cards, you put them in your discard pile, and they shuffle back in your deck. The most interesting thing about this game, and the reason I think it's actually maybe worth your time, especially if you have 7 or 8-year-olds, is that there are these little packets that represent the different types of summer camp activities. So like you could have cooking activities or adventures outdoors or sports and things like that, arts and crafts. And you take those decks and each player gets one special card from that deck to add to their deck. And then each of the decks is unique. They each have special abilities and they interact with the other decks in various ways. So like one deck might be really good at getting candy bars. Candy bars are kind of like you can hold them and then spend them as a currency to buy cards. So those are really good. But then some cards let you consume those candy bars in order to like move really fast on the track and stuff like that. So if you can get those combos going, that's really fun. So I think it's fun. For me, it was like a 2.5 experience, but I think with my daughter and having fun with her, it's easily like a 3.5 experience out of 10. It's more fun with kids that are enjoying themselves and playing these games, and it is a light game anyway, so I didn't have that high of expectations for it when I played it, but it was fun. It was genuinely fun. One thing I will say though is that like most deck builders when you're starting out, these ones, this one especially, the best thing to do is draw cards. So the person who draws the most cards is going to win the game because they'll see their cards that do more things, that let them see more cards, that let them do more things over and over and over again. And eventually you just get to this point where you draw like your entire deck. And then that's too good. So, I mean, it's fine if you're not min-maxing and trying too hard at this game. But if you are, then it might not be so much fun. So that's Summer Camp. I played Pusheen. Pusheen is a game that I got for my daughter. It's called Pusheen Pick, Perfect Pick. And this is a set collection game, an order fulfillment game. Essentially what you're doing is you're taking this little Pusheen minifig and you're putting it on the board in Pusheen's house, or there's like a park, and then you're taking a card next to it. And when you take the card, then you have an option of then turning in all the cards that are in your hand for one of these goal cards. And the goal cards have a variety of abilities and points. The person who gets to 10 points first triggers the end of the game, and then we just add up our points and then you win. Or you don't. There's not much to it. It is kind of fun because there's little things in the game that are unique, like some cards let you steal things from other people if you complete them, and you have to time those right. There are some things that say give you more points if you get other types of contracts, which is cool. The big problem is that there's only a certain number of contracts out at any given time, so you don't see that many. There are cards that let you refresh them, which is nice. I'd say this game is okay. I enjoyed my plays of it. It's not my type of thing, but again, this is a game I got for my daughter, and she adores it. So of course that makes it better for me, and I enjoyed my plays. So it's okay set collection game that my daughter likes. It's a 2.5 for me. I played Revive. I played an over-the-table game of Revive. This is my third play of Revive, and it was awesome. It was a 3-player game, and we played. I can't remember which faction I was. I was the one that got. Oh, I got to place all the green tiles down, the forest tiles down. This is a game that I didn't end up winning, but I had some experience. My first 2 plays of Revive were a little bit like ho-hum. I think the first game I played, I really enjoyed it. I loved the mechanisms. I loved what I was doing. The second game, I thought I understood what was going on, and we played the advanced rules and all that stuff. So we were playing with the advanced rules the whole time, but this time we were like, yeah, I understand what's going on. But I got crushed in the second game. Like, oh, I played against somebody who knew what they were doing, whereas I was still figuring it out. And when I got to the end of the game, I wasn't super enthused about playing it again online, at least not losing that badly online. I think we lost by like 40 points, me and my other friend. And over the table, something clicked when we started playing it. Everyone sort of got it. We had a really tight game. And some of the interesting things that happened in this game were the places to expand with your people, to put your people on, to populate, they were all on one side of the board. And then like all of the water tiles were on the other side of the board pretty much. And so it made it so if you went out towards the water, you had like no places to put your guys. It was interesting. So the kind of dynamic of having to bounce back and forth and trying to figure out a middle ground space to expand from was really cool. I also wanted to say that this game is an immense table hog. I did not expect it to be this big. Having just the main board and the player boards. The player boards are literally like huge player boards. Here's a picture of the player boards, and they're very beautiful and they're cool looking. They're just essentially a bunch of tracks and places to put your stuff to wait for things. But my main complaint was that even my table, I have a pretty decent sized table, and I had difficulty fitting it on the table at 3 players. I can't imagine playing it at 4 players. I don't know if it would fit on my table, honestly, at 4 players. So if you're thinking about picking up Revive, just consider your table space. It is very important that you are able to play the game that you bought. So Revive was a lot of fun for me. It was a 4.5 experience out of 5 for me. Really want to play it again. Over the table, especially, the interaction was very fun. I felt that it was more solitaire in the first couple games I played, and then the second game, or third game, I realized that there's a lot of ways to disrupt people, and then that was really, really interesting. So, Revive. All right. I had a 7+ hour game of Through the Ages over the table. Now, this was probably a mistake to play this game. I love Through the Ages. I love it. It is so good. It might be, I think it's one of the most brilliant designs in board gaming, honestly. And the yellow and blue banks are one of the best mechanisms I've ever seen used in a game. They're so fluid. They're so clever. And the tension with those 2 banks is so high. So we played a 4-player game of Through the Ages at game night one day. And boy, oh boy, I don't recommend that. First of all, we played with 2 new players who did not know the rules, so we had about an hour rules teach. This is not including the 7 hours played, by the way. Then we had, we were going through it with lots of rules explanations along the way. There was a lot of analysis paralysis prone people, or people who were, they weren't all analysis paralysis prone, but basically there's so much stuff going on in Through the Ages, and so many ways to run through your turn that you can run through your turn, realize you did a mistake, try to back up, try to fix everything, then run back through, and so that takes a lot of time. And the downtime in Through the Ages is legendary. I don't know if you've ever played this game, but even online, the downtime is immense. A 3-player game online can run like several hours, like 2.5 hours, just because you're sitting there waiting for someone to figure out the most efficient move for their turn. So I ended up in 3rd place in this one. I was clearly out in the lead. I had the best culture engine in this game, and was about to build some strong military to keep myself ahead. When we hit an event, somebody put an event in that I remember, it was terrorism It was terrorism. And the person who was last, who was clearly last in culture, got to destroy one of each of our buildings. And it set me back so far, so much. It ended up costing me like a technology, a military technology. Ended up costing me then like several turns to try to get back into military. But he at that point had just sprung ahead, took the military, ended up declaring a war on me with like 55 plus strength, with no way I could catch up, just because of the way things kind of had planned out after that. He did a couple of aggressions and things like that. I'm not whining. This was just like, I had a great time playing this game, but I'd say that this war was one of the worst wars I've ever been in through the ages. I ended up losing like 65 points. And went back to 4th place, but because of my engine, I was like generating 22, 24 points every turn. I managed to get back up to 2nd place. So I think like if that had not happened, I would have outright won the game. But it was a thing where I got back to 2nd place, and then I was like very close to 2nd place in before final scoring, and then the impacts hurt me. And so it flipped and I got 3rd. So it was a lot of fun. I really had a great time, but I will never play this game again with new players. I feel that it just takes way too long. At one point, I did my turn, and then I went up to teach Mlem to a bunch of other people who were at another table wanted to play that. And when I got back, it was still not my turn. So I really just have a problem with the downtime in this game. I think that it is a brilliant game and possibly one of the best Civilization games ever made. But it just is almost unplayable at more than like 2 people over the table. I'd say unless you are absolutely pros and you know what you're doing and you can take your turns really quickly, it is not worth playing. So I'd say that it was a 3 out of 5 experience for me. The game is a 5 out of 5. If that makes any sense to you, I don't know. I'm still wrestling with that anyway. But Through the Ages, 7 hours or more. I played Sequoia. Sequoia is a small, light, and somewhat pointless blind bidding game. So we played this as a kind of light starter for the evening. We played the same night. We played 6-player Cupidos. We played a 6-player game of Sequoia. So Sequoia is basically you have 5 dice and you're rolling those dice, and then you have to pair those dice up. You only roll them once, and you just pair those dice up, and then one of the dice is not used. And then we're going to reveal those dice. And the dice correspond to, from 2 to 12 on the board. And the board is just a bunch of these cards that are placed out on the board. And the cards have various points on them. So denoting like if you have the most tokens on those cards, you'll get that many points. So anyway, you're blind bidding, you're placing out tokens, and then you're doing it again. And you're doing it again. And eventually someone's going to win something. But you have to outright win it. In order to get the points. If you tie, then you go into a roll-off, and then you might roll the number needed, or you might not. It's completely random and complete nonsense. So this is a game that I wouldn't even recommend to people who don't like board games and want to get into board gaming. I thought this game was completely unnecessary, and there was no dice mitigation, and there were no choices really, except for which, like, do you want to split the dice to 7, or do you want to split to 4, or how do you want to, you're 5 and the 2, or a 2 and a 2? Like, those aren't really choices. You don't know what everyone else at the table is doing. Maybe this plays better at fewer players. Maybe at 3 players it's better. But at 6 it was absolute chaos, and we couldn't tell what was going on. And by the end, everyone was done with it. And it went on. It was supposed to take like 10 minutes, and the game went 30 minutes. So I'd say like not worth it. Sequoia, don't buy it. It's not great. It's a 1 out of 5 for me. I'd say it's one of the worst games I've played in a while. All right, the last game in this roundup is a 6-player game of Quest for El Dorado. Now, you might be asking yourself, what in the heck are you doing playing a 6-player game of El Dorado? That game only plays up to 4 players. And you'd be right. However, there are a couple of threads on Board Game Geek talking about how to make a 6-player game work. And my friend has 2 copies of El Dorado. And it was in her bucket list to actually put these 2 games together and play a massive 6-player game of El Dorado. So we did it. And it was fun. Until it didn't work. So essentially what happens in this game is it's a deck building game, a lot like Cubitos, but with cards, and you're playing your cards to move on spaces. There's these hexes that have specific requirements for you to move on to. And you're trying to get to El Dorado all the way across the board. And the coolest mechanism in this game is that in the market, when one card is completely finished, so there's like 4 or 5 cards of a type, and when someone has bought the last one, they get to choose among the remaining extra cards that are not in the market to put in the market. So they get to kind of shape what everyone else is going to be buying, which is really fun, and it's a really cool idea. By the way, this is a Reiner Knizia game. It's one of his most famous games. But what happens in a 6-player game, and what we did was we had 3 players starting on one side and 3 players starting on the other side. We kind of met in the middle, and then we expected us to go the other side. And so 3 people would be going to the El Dorado on this side, and 3 people were going to the El Dorado on this side. It was a bad idea, however, to put the mountain terrain, the one with a little canyon that goes through the middle, in the center of the board, in the middle, because there are only 2 hexes wide spaces to go on that tile. So we were going, and then we're playing the game, and then suddenly someone said, you know what would be really funny is if we got to the middle at the same time, and then we couldn't move anywhere. And they're like, nah, it's not going to happen, don't worry. By that time, one person was clearly ahead. We figured that they would win. But a couple of rounds later, we all ended up meeting in the middle. 5 out of the 6 players ended up meeting in the middle, and nobody could advance because you can't advance through other players. I'm not sure if that rule should be tweaked for a 6-player game, but we all met in the middle, and then everyone said, well, there's nothing we can do. I'm not going to go backwards because going backwards would give you ground. So I'm not going to do that. So nobody wanted to budge. And so we decided to call the game without finishing it, having it be a complete failure, but also a lot of fun along the way. So an enjoyable experience. What I recommend doing, do not use that kind of, that mountain canyon tile. Use multiple tiles so you can have multiple paths to go through to the end. It's definitely doable. Like, everything else worked perfectly fine except for that last tile. So if that wasn't there and there was a big open area we could have moved along, this game would have worked. So I'd say, and it was a lot of fun. So we'll probably try it again one of these days, but that was the last game I played this month, which was The Quest for El Dorado by Reiner Knizia. And that is it. Those are the games I played in April. Thank you very much for watching. If you're interested in supporting us, you may do so at Patreon at patreon.com/hiddenassets. Come and join us in the Discord and join us for tournaments. The Stoneburner Open is currently going on, and it is close to the finals. So we'll see you later. Have a good one. Take care.